welcome back to Distraction, episode 11, with me, Zach. And this is where I distract you with things that have been distracting me in and out of quarantine. Thank you for coming back or joining. I have finally finished all of my university work, which I've been complaining about over the past few weeks, and I feel a different sense of joy, a different sense of freedom, which is why I'm doing this podcast like this. Normally, I have to do it like quite late at night, or I have to wait till everyone to go out or finish my uni work. But this is a bit free, so it might be a bit longer today. I hope you enjoy. I'm going to have a few suggestions. I always try to throw a few things out that I've listened to and watched during the week, whether that be books, TV shows, films, podcasts, that sort of thing. And I've got a bit of an interesting story for the end, because I've realised I've been doing a lot on topics, and I thought this week I would try and do something just of personal stories, because a lot of funny things happen to me that I think are quite normal. Then when I talk to other people, turns out not a lot of it's that normal, so that should be pretty fun. But yeah, I just wanted to jump straight into it. And for I do like a little bit of like internet gossip news. I don't really talk about it, but this week KSI, and hear me out. I'm not like a little I'm not a little side man boy fanboy thing. He's released a new album, and it's obviously rap, hip hop. And I've been really getting into hip hop recently, to like Childish Gambino and like NF, things like that. So I'm like really into the music, and I know that lots of people won't be, but I just think this is a very important thing. So I'll explain. The whole situation around it is obviously he's released a new album. It's called Dissimulation. Go and give it a listen if you like hip hop. It's not just a YouTube album. It's a genuinely good album worth listening to if you like that sort of music. But there's a whole meme in the fandom. I don't really like that word. We discuss it at a lot at uni and like the toxic fandoms and things like that and what happens with them. But I suppose you could say the fandom of the YouTube community of the Sidemen. There's a bet, not a bet. He said in one of his videos that if he gets a debut number one, he would shave his head and become bald ski because he did it once before. And there's a whole, because obviously he was up against the 1975 of one of their albums and Orcs D, he's one of the K-pop stars. They both have albums out at the minute, and obviously both incredibly well-known artists who's very well-known, what's the word, audiences, fans, that sort of thing. And so the joke is that if he gets like things like that on his head, and it like takes ages for him to do it. And so he's been campaigning like, I'm happy with number two, I'm totally happy with number two, which we don't know if that's a marketing technique, because now all his fans and all of his friends and all the biggest YouTubers from England and America across the platform have been putting on the Instagram stories like, new album out, go and listen to it. Even Logan Paul, the person, he's had like this whole back and forth with them, they hate each other. Even he was like shouting out the album because of how important it is. And some of you might have already clicked away, or some of you were like, this is just like a little fanboy of YouTubers. Because I understand the Sidemen are like football, quite lad humour, and I didn't really like them until later last year. But the reason I think this is very important, and it does seem like he's getting a number one, which is really strange considering like the 1975 and K-pop stands are so, sorry, that's my PS4, are so what's the word? They're so like, there's just so many of them, and obviously they'll buy vinyls and CDs and stream endlessly. And I've seen like mainstream celebrities talk about the 1975 and things like that. But it's an important contribution because he is from the YouTube world, and many of the mainstream media don't like the YouTube world because they see it as people taking their jobs, sort of thing, if that makes sense. So lots of critics and things have given him quite low poor scores, but I think it's really important because you need people like KSI who, obviously he's got this massive platform now, but he was just, I know he went to a private school, but it wasn't like Boris Johnson private. It was just a regular, if you can have a regular private school, and he was just a lad from London who rose to fame through the good content that he created, and we wouldn't have, and if he, I'm trying to say, go and stream his album if you'd want to, if you just give it a listen. Because if he, and we don't get the people at the top of YouTube to feed their way into mainstream media, it's going to become a lot more difficult for other people to. And I'm not saying that like, oh, with this podcast, I want to start music and get into mainstream media. But it is the way forward. But as we've seen before in the media, people who, traditionally, the people who run it and the people at the top don't like anything new. And I think that him getting a number one with an album from a YouTuber is absolutely phenomenal, and it does look like he's going to get a number one. And he even joked about like the 1975 fans like not doing enough. But something that they don't realize is not the 1975 fans, the media, is just how much of a community that YouTube can be now. So I just wanted to put that out there. That it's really important. Like, go and give it a stream. You don't have to buy anything. Just stream it on Spotify. Just give it like one of the songs of this. And the song I'd recommend is Houdini. If you want to go and give that a listen. But yeah, I just think it's really important to do, because like you have to look at like the Logan Paul KSI fight, which everyone like sort of not like everyone in the YouTube and internet community, which many of us are. If you're watching this now, you probably spend a lot of time on YouTube or Twitter, and maybe your jobs. For me, like my future job prospects, doing like mass communication, just interested, is probably in this industry. So to see people like him pushing the barriers, I just think it's really really important. And that's why I would think more people should maybe get behind it. And you look at like the KSI Logan Paul fight; it broke records for the amount of people that bought tickets, for the amount of viewers it got, and it gives so much new exposure to boxing. Would you shut up? Sorry, I'm just yelling at my TV. And people are like, boxing doesn't need exposure. Boxing is one of the biggest sports sort of in the world, but it given exposure to such a new audience. I sat in a room with all my housemates and extended friends who I'd never sat and watched boxing with before. Some of them I don't think I'd ever watched boxing before, and we watched this boxing fight, and I was more intrigued by it, and I've watched boxing since. So it just shows you what can happen if we do. And I know people like lots of the recommendations I do suggest on this podcast are very male centered, and I'm trying not to be. I'm trying to like reach out. And until I went to uni and started just sitting like in the living room with some of my girl flatmates and started watching like the YouTubers they watch when they put it on, I'd never really been exposed to that area of it, and I do like a lot of them. And like when I go around their house, I'll happily watch them. I'll even watch some here. But and like I can't think of there's one, I think she's called Ella, and I can't remember her second name, but I know she does music. And the point is that by supporting KSI, even if you're not like a little sideman fanboy, that's still pushing the platform to make it easier for everyone else down the road. Voice break shows I'm serious. Yeah, that was probably like a really long-winded thing, but I just think it's important to talk about, so it doesn't get described on a white man's 20-year-old podcast on YouTube. Where else is it going to get talked about? But yeah, stream it. Sorry if that's turned you off the podcast, like he just talks about that sort of shit. I don't, and I'll talk about something cooler next. Honeyboy. Honeyboy is a semi-autobiographical film by Shia LaBeouf, and it's the story of when he was, well, based on the story of when he was a child living in a motel with his father whilst he was filming the Disney show Even Stevens. And although it doesn't explicitly say that was the show he was filming, there's lots of videos on YouTube which compare scenes from the film and scenes from Even Stevens and like sort of interject, and that's basically what was happening. But it's starring Shia LaBeouf alongside Noah Jute and Lucas Hedges. So basically, don't want to give too much away. It's available on Amazon Prime right now for £2 to rent if you have Prime, and it's just so Shia LaBeouf plays his father in this film, and it's set over two time periods. One, which is around the time he was becoming a young adult, or like end of his teenagers, early 20s, when he sort of had his phase of many people thought he was like going a bit mental. And in this film, it sort of explains why. And from all intents and purposes that I've seen from interviews recently, he seems like a really genuine, nice person. Sorry. And even with his new film, what is it, Peanut Butter Falcon, he seems really genuine. He gave the first major acting platform to the boy with, I don't know the correct term to use, I think it was the boy with learning difficulties. It was like the first ever major acting role for someone with those disabilities, which is absolutely amazing. But yeah, to this podcast, Honeyboy, it's on Amazon Prime. It feels like you sat through a therapy session with Shia LaBeouf, and he talks about what happens with his father, and he talks about what it was like to be on a TV show. And if that wasn't enough, and it's fantastic, go and watch it. And if that's not enough, there was also a 4-part podcast available on Apple Podcasts to go along with the film, where they interview Shia LaBeouf, and he also then gives some more insights about his father and about the things that happened. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. Go and give it a watch. Amazon Prime right now, £2. Best £2 you'll spend all of lockdown. Yeah. Also, just on that, the rhythm section starring Jude Law and someone else. It came out the cinema just before lockdown, And I'm not even sure if it came out of the cinema, actually. It was being advertised a lot, and I thought it looked quite good. And then it came for home release, where it was like £16 a ticket. And lots of the home releases I don't think would be doing that well on Prime that I know of. I obviously don't know much. And it's recently come on for £1.99 rent if you're a Prime member. I haven't watched it yet, but I've bought it in anticipation because you have 30 days to watch. So I've got that as well if you're interested in like any new films that had just come out, and it's available to watch for £2, which is cheaper than a cinema ticket. So hop on that. Yeah, I think that'd be pretty sick. So, what I imagine I titled this podcast and maybe drew a few people in. I once walked 28.5 miles in one day. No, this was not during quarantine. This was quite a long time ago, and I was considerably fitter, but also a bit stupider. So I used to go to a youth group, and at the youth group, my friend Joel, who I've talked about a lot, his dad helped run it, and I made lots of friends there, such as people like Aaron, Paul. These are just a few names you'll need. Daz for the oncoming story. And this is something that it's funny when you're with. So obviously, we're very outdoorsy people. We like camping, and these sort of people. It's funny that I've just realised I had so much more to talk about, but I'm in the story now, so screw it. I'll probably talk about it at the end. But so these lots of outdoorsy, campy people, and at the time, I thought I was, if it makes sense, lacking behind. I'll get into the story, this won't make sense until, but now afterwards I realised that a lot of people haven't done this, so it was a Cleveland walk, across the Cleveland moors, and it was for mountain rescue, so you pay a certain amount, and that gets donated to the mountain rescue, and basically you do, it was meant to be a 25-mile walk around the moors all in one day. Some people run it. We chose to walk it because we were a bit of a bigger group, and you had people like me. And all the proceeds go to charity. And they're there. It's just a volunteer event. And if you get lost, lucky you, because it's actually the mountain rescue people that you're doing it for. So they're there to help you. So, and I remember we were the first group to set off. So you get there. I must have woke up about 6 in the morning. So we get there to set off at about 7 a.m. And there's like a little box. So you go to like a community centre. There's a little box in tape outside on the grass, and all of us went and stood in this box. And all the runners go first, and then we were the first set of walkers to go after that. So we jump in, and they're like, go, and we all just start walking. Obviously, you don't run because you've got 25 miles ahead of you. I'll point out that I had a backpack, Bear Grylls backpack, which was very comfortable. I bought a brand new, because at the time I was working at Go Outdoors, where I don't know if this is a secret, if I'm allowed to say it, but you get 50% off if you work for Go Outdoors. So I got this really expensive pair of shoes, like £200 boots, for 50% off. And I had some socks that were anti-blister socks, and tell you, they saved my life. I walked for 28.5 miles, and these boots and socks didn't. I think I got 2 blisters, but for 28 miles, I've had more blisters off a night out, and I have pictures of my phone of my feet more destroyed after a night out because I've worn the wrong pair of shoes than after this walk. So we set off on this walk, and it's about 7 a.m. all full of like vigor. I'm like really excited. Me and Joe, I've got my GoPro. This GoPro, I have it on a selfie stick, and I carry that for the full 28.5 miles, which is one of my favourite things that someone said to me afterwards, and they were like, no matter where we bring Zach, and he'll do whatever we all do, but the difference is he'll do it with a camera in his hand. And I just really, really liked that sentiment, that I'll be way behind everyone else doing whatever we're doing, but I'll always have a camera going like this, and I think that's really funny. So, and also in my bag I had all my waterproof gear, which I wouldn't need, and I had just some food and not enough water, but I'll get to that. So we set off, and everyone's sort of chatting. I think there's about between 5 and 10 of us, and we're discussing. And they were like, have you not walked this far before? Like, what's the furthest you've walked? And I was like completely in the minority. I was like, the furthest I've walked is I did like the North Yorkshire Three Peaks with the same people, so they'd obviously done much bigger walks. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. We set off, and it's basic course across the moors. So you walk down through like a little village, and then you go up moors, through forests. You go through fields, up and down little hills. Then towards the end, I remember you go right up the side of a moor, come down, and then you just have to walk back through the village right to where you started. Quite easy. And it's a bit like a marathon where the runners would do it in a matter of hours. Quite simple. So we start off and we're going, and the first thing I remember is, so yeah, we have this conversation about it, and we began to walk, and we first started to hit an incline for the first like moor. We sort of start to go up, and I remember my friend Aaron, who I'll spoil it now. Aaron that day had something wrong with, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, he had something wrong with his chest. He struggled to breathe. Something like, I don't know. He's so fit and healthy, so I don't really understand what went wrong. But if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have survived this walk, because as bad as it sounds, because he lacked behind because of a genuine medical condition, not like medical condition on the day, that gave me a chance to catch up, because I was by far the most unfit person there. I remember specifically one of the lads on the first walk up, he was like, yeah, so all week he's been bulking with like pasta and things, and like really like carbohydrating up and training. And I hadn't done a single thing. I'd woke up that morning. Me and Joel had planned it like months and months before, and I just remember waking up being like, I'm gonna do this today. Didn't really know the route. Like you don't know the route. You have a map, and you obviously have to find your own way around. But we let the adults do that. Joel's dad. So we're going up this hill, and I get halfway up, and I'm dying. And I remember Aaron being like, get to the top, and I'll give you no. He was like, and then have some of the flapjack that's in your bag. And I was like, right. And Aaron does this a lot, so I was like, fine. So we get to the top, and I specifically remember I put my hat and sunglasses down, had a bit of the flapjack, and I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'm gonna do this 28 miles. So we get walking, and then like 10-15 minutes later, I'm like, fuck, I left my sunglasses on the floor, but I didn't. Aaron had been wearing them, so he had his on and his on the head, and I was like, I've lost mine, what the fuck. And I got really, really scared. But he was like a bit ahead of me, and I ran up to him. He was like, no, I've got them, it's fine. So we continue walking, and you're still sort of in a group at this point, like loads and loads of people, because no one's really separated yet, because you're all sort of going at the same pace. And it's really, really fun, and I was like chatting to a few different people, but mainly talking to Joel. The fun thing about Joel is, and this happened when we were in Ireland as well, is if we're doing something quite maybe strenuous, he doesn't like to just fall back. He doesn't walk with you. If he gets to the point where, because this is a really, really tough walk, and you did have points where you just had to put your headphones and you had to get in your own head and you had to keep yourself going. I fully wanted to quit around halfway through. So, and at one point Joe just sort of basically left me. He did it the same in Ireland when we were going up. I think it's like the stairs to heaven. It was me, him, and Aisling, and we were really far behind. And he just went to the top, came down, and went and sat in the car and like waited for us because we were taking so long. But no spoilers. So we get over the first bit, and it's pretty easy. And I've also got these gel things that cyclists use in my backpack as well, because I got those from Go Outdoors, and they saved my life. So we continue walking, and I specifically remember that Joel had told me that midpoint during the day we get dinner, like lunch, and we never did. So like we walked for hours and hours. Say it was midday, so we walked since 7 or 8 in the morning, and it was now midday. And I was like, right, when do we eat? And we all sat down, and we had like some snacks, but I hadn't brought that many snacks because I thought we were getting lunch. And I realised that you make your own lunch, and then at the end of the day, whenever you finish, that's when they give you food. Wouldn't be that good for us. So we continue walking again. We keep going. We sort of, you lose people along the way. Not like our group, but like you just sort of separate from people. And we met Joel's uncle, who couldn't participate because I think he'd just broken his leg and was recovering from it. I think that was about that time. And we met him at the halfway point. And this is where I was so determined to drop out. I'd used all my water. And it was at the time when we were walking, I was thinking about like drinking, like cupping water out of streams and drinking it. But Aaron and Joel were like, don't do that, it's dangerous. I was thinking about, like, there was half empty water bottles inside the paths and things that other people may have dropped, and I was like, I might drink that. So you get to this halfway point, and I'm like drinking water. I think they give you a snack and some water, so I'm drinking that. And I remember we sat, it must have been for about maybe even 20 minutes, maybe not even that long. And I was like, right, I'm not sure I can do it. And Joel's dad, God bless him, was really nice and helped me. And he was like, right, so we're doing like the next stint, which was a mile long along this dirt path, nothing to look at. Then we go down this hill, and then we come back up, and then we go up the final moor. So I'm like, right, okay. And so Joel and his dad basically dragged me onto this mile walk, and I'm like, and I'm like, really, really. This was like the point where I was like starting to crack. This must have been at like maybe 2 in the day, so it was really hot. And this might sound insensitive, but you know when you watch Comic Relief and you see kids who have to walk like a mile along a dirt track to go and get water, this is the closest thing I've ever experienced to having to walk just about a mile and a bit along a dirt track. There's nothing else there, and the heat obviously wasn't African heat, but it was still really, really hot compared to what anything I'd noticed. And I remember I put my earphones in my old iPod Touch, and because iPod Touches and Nanos, like back in the day, this was only 2017, but my old iPod Nano didn't have that much of a battery, and also we didn't know if it was going to rain, so I had to keep it really well, and I only used it every now and again. But this is, I put my headphones in and I just walked, and I think a part way down, I specifically remember having a conversation with Steve, Joel's dad, about just what I was doing at the time, something to do with college, and like he just tried to distract me. So we get to the top, and there's like a ranger there, and he was like, "Sorry, we didn't plan it wrong, but people before you have discovered you can't go this way down and up. Like there's something that happened in the last few days while they were prepping it that meant that we couldn't go that way. So we had to turn around and come right back down this mile-long path, which is where the first 25 to 26 miles come in. So we're now at 26 miles, where it was meant to only be a 25-mile walk. So we walk all the way back, and I remember getting to the same point where I wanted to drop out last time. I was like, "Here, I'm going to drop out. Like I can't." And again, they talked to me, they got me through it, and then we had to go down a path, and we got to like a stream, and this must have been 2 p.m. So like you're 20, no, maybe 17 miles in at this point. So my feet are dead. I'm really tired. And I remember this is when Aaron first started to be a bit like something's wrong with his chest, and he hung back. I remember we talked about GoPros and videos on like YouTube, really like cute stuff, really stuff I was interested in, and I was like, "Oh, this is really class." Like I said, Joel was sort of like away at this point because he got in the zone on this dirt path, and he just started walking, which he does, and I don't blame him for it because I wouldn't have been able to hang back with me. So me and Aaron are like walking up. We're starting to like ascend up this moor. It's pretty easy and really fun. And then the next thing I remember, we must be at 20 miles now, maybe at 21, 22, and we get to it's probably like, say that's say there's like, you can see me there, that's the incline, like a really steep incline I've done on some walks and some hills in the Lake District. This must have been like just a regular 40, not 45 degree, just a regular hill that like you'd happily drive up, happily walk up, happily cycle up easily. But I was so dead. I had this pack of gummies that were meant for cyclists that release like a short burst of energy. I had about 4 of them, and I was like walking up this hill, and I had to stop about every 10 meters. And like I said, this wasn't a steep hill, but my feet were so dead, and I had no energy. Everyone else in my group was sat at the top of the hill waiting for me, where there was 2 rangers. So every few miles would be like rangers sat there to make sure they check off that everyone has made it to that point, to make sure they haven't lost anyone. And we weren't even like the last people there. And people, so we were, say this was maybe 5 p.m. So we set off at 7 a.m. This is 5 p.m. Some people had finished before midday. So this is 5 p.m. We're getting there. And I just remember this being the hardest walk of my entire life, walking up this hill. I remember stopping, sitting down. I remember dragging my legs like every single time. It sounds so dramatic, but I've never been so depleted of energy that I just couldn't walk. And I remember getting to the top, but the problem was, because I was always last to the resting place, when we got there, people would be like, "Right, let's go. We've been sat here for 20 minutes. We want to get walking." But thankfully, I think they gave me like a short amount of time, and I can't remember if someone gave me something, or if one of the rangers gave me like a drink or something, because I'd forgot my water bottle. I wasn't drinking as much water as I should have been. Well, I had my water bottles, but because I drank all the water because I hadn't brought enough, because I wasn't really prepared. And even on the walks, like, everything felt weighty. Like, we'd find litter on the way and we'd pick it up and put it in our backpacks that other people had dropped. But like every time you put a bit of litter in your bag, like obviously I'm not going to leave it on the moors, but it was like, oh my gosh, I'm having to add another piece of weight to my backpack, which sounds really dramatic. It probably wasn't that bad. Then we walk across the moors, and it's like wet moss. So you walk and your boots are getting all wet. I remember my ankles, I think it went over the boots and in. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, this is so difficult. But it was also one of them things where I absolutely love. So this sounds a bit strange. I love small water sources or anything to do with, like, you know, when you wake up from camping and it's like a dewy area. Like the grass is all wet. I really like that sort of thing when I wake up. So I'm walking across this the top of the moor, and I've just absolutely hated my life. And then we start to descend, which if anyone's ever walked up hills or peaks in the Lake District, you know that the descent is worse than the incline, because on your knees it's like boom, 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 like really, really stressful on your knees. But also you have the idea that we're getting out of here, like this is the last descent, and that really gave me a spurt of confidence. So we get down. I remember we came through like a little archway thing. We come out, and it's towards the end of the day, maybe 7 p.m. and I'm like, maybe 6, 7 p.m. and I'm like, yes, I like get the frick in here. And there's 2 women stood there, and they go, congrats, we're at the 25, we've walked 25 miles all day, we're there. At this point 26, because of obviously the conundrum with the other mile. And she goes, yeah, so you haven't finished. The finishing point is where you started, which is about 2 miles down that road. I might be getting some of this mixed up, but we're definitely ended on 28 and a half, and it was meant to be 25 or 6. So you go, right. And like Joel, I'm pretty sure Joel, well, I remember me, Joel, and his auntie set off, because like we sort of had that realization of, are you joking? And they were like, no. So we have to walk down this road, then we have to walk down this village, and then another road, and then you get back to where we started. So me, him, and his auntie start to walk down this road, but obviously I'm very, very slow, so they go ahead without me. Aaron has talked to the people. He's like, I've got a lot of chest pains. His girlfriend, now wife at the time, now wife, was also with him, and Joe's dad. And he was like, you're gonna have to drive me home because my chest really, really hurts. But the people were really strange, and they were like, oh, you'll hate it. Not strange. They were like encouraging. They're like, you'll hate it if you don't finish. Like, just finish. Keep walking. It's only 2 more miles. You've come all this way. You'll hate it. And Aaron, I think, had done it like 3 or 4 times before, so he was a bit like, I don't really give a shit. I'm dying. Like, my heart hurts. And what ended up happening was that I didn't realise, like 20 or 30 minutes after us, they'd convinced him to finish, and then they were walking 2 of the mountain rescue team with them, like to make sure he was all right, and they were walking down. But whilst you're on this walk, Joel leaves me, and Joel's auntie leaves as well, but she assumes I'm with Joel. And I just remember like stepping, and like every step was like boom, boom. And at one point, I collapsed on the side of the road in this village. And I remember people coming out the houses or looking out the windows at me. I'm on the side of this road, and I'm crawling like a few steps, and then I'm stopping. And I get up and I walk like two lengths of houses, and I'm stopping and lying on the side of the road. These mountain rescue vans are going past, and like none of them stop because they know I'm fine. But I was like lying like starfish on the floor, and then I get up again and I start walking, and Joel's auntie comes back and she's like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. Also, little fun detail, if you're squeamish, might want to pause it for this. I had what the one blister I got pretty much covered all of the underbit of my foot of my big toe, and I could feel liquid inside of it like sloshing side to side when I was walking. So I was like walking on like the side of my foot, like really slowly, quite therapeutically. So I'm going at like a snail's pace. So his auntie comes back and she's like, did Joel leave you? And I was like, oh yeah, but like it's fine. She was like, Joel, apparently Joel had said like he'd stay with me or whatever, and Joel just fucked off. And she was like, right. So she'd like got to the end and come back for me, which I'm saying, I don't know if my feet were dead. I was just really unfit. She got to the end, come back like half a mile for me, and we walked. I can't remember what we chatted about because I remember just being in my own head like, I need to finish this. We get back, and it must be, I don't know if it's 8 p.m, 9 p.m, could have been later, I'm not sure, but I remember we did at least like 12 hours. Must have been longer because I've done the 3 peaks, which is less than that, and we took us 12 hours. So we get to the end, and like I remember everyone's clapping, and Daz shakes my hand. I'd walked with Daz at some point. I didn't mention that. I'd been walking with Daz for a fair bit. Shakes my hand, and he's like, well done. And I was like, thank you. Pitch black. We started like during the day. Pitch black now. We go back into the youth centre, and they give us the dinner that I thought was at midday, and I'd waited all these hours for. And it was like spaghetti bolognese or something. Good thing I wasn't veggie back then, because I'm pretty sure every option had meat in. I remember just like scarfing it down. I'd bought a t-shirt at the beginning of the day, and you get it if you complete. So I went and got the t-shirt, and I put that on. And at the time I was 17, and technically that means that I was like a minor completing it. So everyone else arrived. I remember Aaron got there like very, very late on, and Joel's like auntie had to drive him home, drive his car because he couldn't because like his chest was just really bad. But everyone's there, and I'm just like wolfing this down. I'm just sat, and like, I filmed like loads of it, but I never made the video because lots of it was just incoherent, and like lots of the shots were really weird. So I don't know what I was feeling. And the guy who's running it comes out and he goes, "So we have a first walker today." And I was like, "Is that me?" And like everyone like looks at me and like smiles. And it turns out that it's meant for kids that complete the walk. Many kids who have beat me at this point, by the way. And you get this like, you're meant to get like an Easter egg or a big bag of chocolate, and they'd run out of Easter eggs, so they had these big bags of chocolate, and he was like, "Which one do you want?" It was like Toblerone or Cadbury's, and I was like, "Go for the Cadbury's." I give you this big bag of chocolate that no one else gets because they're all like, even Joel at this point was like a month older than me, so it was almost like must be almost 3 years to the month. Oh, we're in May now, bollocks. This was in March, so I got this big bag of chocolate, and that felt more worth it to me than walking the entire 28 and a half miles, like getting the t-shirt and having this whole thing. And I got this bag of chocolate, and I remember I went home that night, had a bath to just soak my entire body. I watched The Nice Guys with like Ryan Gosling. That film, I watched that for the first time in the bath, and I was just sat there for like 2 hours. But yeah, that was the story of when I walked 28 and a half miles in one day. I hope to do it again, but it was probably the toughest thing I ever did. Hope I didn't miss anything out. I was going to get Joel on, but like I said, we spent most of the day apart because I was just way too slow for him, which is completely fair. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that story. I've never really done stories before on the podcast, but like I said, a lot of things happen to me. Some stories I can't say on the podcast. I don't exactly want to maybe incriminate myself or others. Not incriminate, it's just weird stuff. That sounds even worse. But you know what I mean. And yeah, I have so many funny stories that when I tell them, people are like, "That's a bit mad. Like, I've never done that." And I just think it's so normal because yeah, I just think everything in my life is quite normal. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to finish off with a few things I was meant to say at the beginning. If you're still here, thank you so, so much. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story. Leave a dislike if you didn't. So some of the other things I wanted to discuss, just a bit of film news, is Mindy Kaling is writing Legally Blonde 3. That's pretty exciting. The first two Legally Blondes are pretty sick. I'm sure most people have seen them. I watched them for the first time when I was with my two friends in London. We'd done a whole day again, walking as well. My feet were dead. And I remember sitting in the bed and we watched Legally Blonde on this tiny TV. First time I'd ever seen it. Really, really good. And I'm glad Mindy Kaling is writing it because she's really, really funny. Obviously, in The Office, had her own TV show, Mindy Project. She's done so much. She was in that new film, The Late Show. It might be called something similar, different, on Amazon Prime. Really, really good. I'm excited for that. Joe Cornish, Edgar Wright are starting a film company together. That's always exciting when people start film companies. I think Simon Pegg and Nick Frost have got their own film company as well. I'm surprised they didn't like team up. But obviously Joe Cornish is the director of Attack the Block, and Edgar Wright, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, that sort of thing. Across those I've talked about. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Animal Crossing. So I saw a few tweets this week and it was really funny. And if anyone plays Animal Crossing, you'll know when you got a hand in. So I finished the museum now. A little bit of a humble brag there. But when you go and take fossils in and you've already got the fossils, Blathers says, "Oh, I'd love to take them for my personal collection, but I'll show restraint." And there's a tweet, and it was like, the FBI sat in a van outside waiting for Blathers to take them into his own collection to like grab him. And then he goes, "I'll leave him. I'll resist. I'll let you keep them." And they go like, "Oh shit." And then there was this whole thread about the conspiracy of Tom Nook. He's had all these jobs over the years, and I think it's money laundering personally. Because you have to think about it, they're tiny Nook shop. When you sell turnips there, you can sell them like for millions of bells. How many bells are running through this Nook shop? Why has no one else in my village ever seen buying and selling anything? I think there's something dodgy there. I'd love it if there was a whole conspiracy backstory to it that Nintendo implemented, but they could never explain because it's a kid's game. I'd absolutely love that. I think it was so funny. And there was a bit of a, what's the word? A bit of a power play that I feel when I play Animal Crossing because I know that I have built. I do like my villagers, but it really pisses me off when they try to either sell me something or try to complain about something when I've built their houses, I've paid for their houses, I pay for every piece of decoration around the island, and I like put trees up, and I like I'm a gardener, a landlord. I'm everything. I don't want to be a landlord. And then they come to you and you're like, Arm's looking a bit ugly in it, and you're like, fuck you, you little squirrel. I hate it. But yeah, and the other thing with Animal Crossing I wanted to mention, if anyone's playing it, you used to be able to catch tarantulas in the Northern Hemisphere, and now they've just switched it to you catch scorpions. Did anyone else really struggle to catch scorpions? Because I was on it for about an hour, and normally, like, so you do the island trick where you cut down and take away all the trees, plants, and stubs, so nothing else can spawn. And then tarantulas normally spawn. And when I do this for a few hours, I'd get a full thing of tarantulas. You could go back and sell for like hundreds of thousands of bells. When I do it with scorpions, in the same amount of few hours, I caught one, and they're just a little bit quicker. Normally, the tarantulas would go like that. It would see you stop, and then when it went down, you'd put your net down, you'd catch it perfectly. But the scorpion's like a little bit quicker, and I've not yet got that. I just can't figure out at what point to drop the net in order to be able to catch them appropriately. So if anyone else has any advice on that, please let me know. But yes, that is the end of episode 11. I really hope you enjoyed it. Sorry if I bored you with the story. Thank you if you really enjoyed the story. I'm going to be doing these they'll probably be coming out Wednesday mornings now because I have no uni work to preoccupy me with. I'm going to have shared this on my public Twitter and Instagram, not just the GoPrandle ones. So if you're from there, hope you enjoyed it. If you do want to follow me on something that isn't my personal accounts, I'm at GoPrandle on film on Instagram. I'm at GoPrandle on Letterboxd. I wouldn't bother with Twitter, just follow Zach Radnall because that's just a mess. But yes, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you.